Okay, hi, Alivia here. Um, so this is a part of the project comprehension where we're creating learning environments based on stories. And so today we're going to explore the book A, and it's a book of pattern play. So the interesting thing about this series of books, it's a part of a series called Math is Categorical Books. So they've got A, a book of pattern play, the action of subtraction, how long or how wide, a measuring guide, the mission of addition, on the scale, a weighty tale, windows, rings, and grapes, a look at different shapes. So, the reason that I'm starting with this book is because I've been reading a lot about executive functions and how students can develop their function skills, and how that really does lead to a deeper level of learning. So, I'm just going to give an example. This is going to be a part of a series of, at least today, just 4 stories that I chose that we're going to walk through. And I'm going to show you generally concept understanding, like the flow of it, different concepts that I would explore and how I would explain them, and explore other concepts that might not necessarily be explicitly stated in the story, but that might be useful to explore in the environment. So let's start with that. So I'm just going to read this page. It actually says reinforced binding. I thought that said reinforced learning. That's funny. In this playful look at patterns, Brian P. Cleary and Brian Gable provide many examples of repeating sequences. So that's tricky. I wonder if a kinder would actually know what that means. What is a repeating sequence? Of shapes, colors, objects, and more. The comical cats of the wildly popular Words Are Categorical series show how patterns can be found all around us. Peppy rhymes, goofy illustrations, and kid-friendly examples make pattern practice fun. Oops. Okay, back. All right. So ABABA, a book of pattern play. So even looking at this character here, the character has a pattern on their dress. They don't have any shoes, and they have a hat. So you could talk a little bit about how the color here, this is a darker yellow. It's almost like a lime green, but it could be in the yellow family. And they also have these like yellow spots, like even the pattern here, you've got green dot, green dot, yellow dot. What comes next? Green dot, because it's a part of a pattern. And you've got your little rake here. You can also notice that the character's face is, I don't know what kind of green to call this, but we can give this a name for this particular shade of green. And we notice it looks like he has some dirt on his nose. So his nose is actually like a darker shade of that green. So pointing that out, I wonder if that's a pattern, right? Because you also have shading here on his feet. So places that are further away from the sun, maybe because he has this visor here, it's bringing down a shade. So that's what makes his nose darker and the bottom of his feet darker. So is that a pattern, like portions of your body that are actually exposed to the sun versus portions of your body that are not exposed to the sun? You can also see his fingers are like folded in. So there's like some darker shading like under the fingers, because those are places, right? When I have my fingers open, the sun could get in, but if they're closed, the sun cannot get in. And then there's a bunch of just numbers here around the book talking about multiplication. It's not necessarily like a pattern, but they are equations, and pattern play, that comes in handy a little bit later. Cool. So we've also introduced some new characters up here who are all doing different things. So one thing that could be interesting is to talk a little bit about each character and what they're doing. Like this guy has on a jetpack. Looks like there might be something coming out of the jetpack. Like, what do you think that is? And it looks like the jetpack is also attached to straps, so it's like physically attached to his back. Like, what does that mean? And then you got this green character here who has a computer. Like, does the student actually know what a computer is, what computers are used for? You can ask, like, why is this character choosing to use a computer to record information as opposed to just like writing it down with pen and paper? And then there's all these other, there's like paper floating around everywhere. You could talk about like, oh, where did the paper come from? Paper comes from trees. That's another concept. So there's also numbers here on the screen and a keyboard. So you have this, you put information into the keyboard and then it displays on the monitor here. So that's another concept of like information in. Where does that information go? How does the information get in there? This character here also has glasses and a bow tie. So that's maybe more formal wear. So he's like a fancy character. Looks maybe like a frog, right? So you could talk about the type of animal that the frog actually is and the family of animals that the frog lives in. Here you've got, I don't know what kind of animal that is, but he's playing with this, is it called an hibiscus? Forgot what this thing is called, but it's basically, you use that for like learning how to count initially. So talking about actually what that is and how to use it, why those are different colors, how the different colors equate to different like values. And then here you just got, looks like a character who just loves the number 9. So he's just got the 9 on his shirt. Just a fan of the number 9. Okay, so a pattern shows repeating in a certain type of way that helps you so you know what's next. So here you've got a comma, right? So that means that the sentence isn't over. We're still going. There's still more to say. But here we do have a pattern on the ground in letters. So we've got a red letter A with a blue background. We've got a blue letter B with a red background. These are the first 2 letters of the alphabet, right? The alphabet is like the sequence of letters that we use in English to represent all the words. So, I mean, I suppose by the time a student gets to kindergarten, they're going to know, the letters in the alphabet. But still, like reinforcing that concept, maybe if you're like a new English language learner, you might not understand the concept of the alphabet yet. So actually getting to the point where you can say what the alphabet is, that these are the first 2 letters of the alphabet and that these 2 letters are repeating. And then you also have the repeating colors. You could talk about the fact that blue and red, right, both primary colors. So that's interesting. So here, if we know that on the ground we have the blue background with an A and the red background with the blue B, and he has these stacks of blue and red paper in his hand, what do you think is on those pieces of paper based on the pattern that you notice on the ground? So let's go back. A pattern shows repeating in a certain type of way that helps you so you know what's next, like A, B, A, B, A. And you can also talk here about the positions of the 2 characters. So you have this character who's at the top, and he's got the signs here, and you've got this character at the bottom here who is actually like, looks like he's placing the letters on the ground in this like shape. So you can talk about like how the letters actually got on the ground and how he possibly got the letters from this character's hand. So there's like a pattern here, right? Because every time that this character gets a new letter, he has to probably go back to this character to pick up the letter and then put the letter back on the ground. So it's a sort of arrangement of colors, shapes, or things. So that's super interesting. So we've got colors here, and specifically when you're first getting used to colors in artistry, you have different utensils that you use. Like I use gel pens a lot, but right now we have crayons. So we have like a red crayon, a blue crayon, a red crayon, a blue crayon, and so we've got a pattern here of colors of all the same type of utensils. So these are all crayons, and they all actually say crayons on them. So there's a letter. You can actually talk about sounding out words here. Like, what does that say? Do you know the sound of all these letters? Do you know what all of these letters are? Do you know that this word is crayons? It's actually on the crayons. It's like labeling the crayon. Then you have shapes here. You've got red circle, you've got green square, red circle, green square, red circle, green square. It's a pattern here. There's a pattern of color shape, color shape, color shape, color shape, or things. So here we've got a baseball, right, which is used for the sport baseball. This is a really cool opportunity to learn about what the sport baseball is, where it's played. Like in certain parts of the world, baseball is not really like a popular thing. People don't have access to the fields or equipment, or maybe people just don't like to play. I really don't know why, but they don't necessarily like play baseball. Then here you've got like an ice cream cone. Something that I actually learned recently is that in China, it's actually really new right now for a lot of people to eat ice cream. So, it's 2019 and people are starting to eat ice cream cones in China for the first time. Like they're importing like milk. And so actually even understanding like what an ice cream cone is. Maybe you can talk about the fact that this ice cream is pink. So what flavor could this ice cream possibly be? It might be strawberry, it might be cherry, possibly watermelon, but it could be in the red family. So you'd have to start thinking about red types of fruit. So you can explore concepts like produce here, which fruit are actually red. You have a cup here, a red cup. It looks like a coffee mug actually. So now you're talking about like utensils and kitchenware. What would you, obviously this is a tool used for drinking, but what would you place in this type of cup? Like this is a coffee mug. So usually you drink tea or coffee in that mug. And maybe someone this young might not actually know what tea or coffee is because they're not introduced to caffeine. And you could talk about the fact that, well, there are like non-caffeinated tea, like refreshing drinks that are herbal, that have fruit flavors. So whole conversations that you can get into as to like how this particular cup could be used for herbal teas. It could be a useful experience to then go shopping with a person like your kinder and get them to buy an herbal tea that they could actually drink out of this type of cup. So the pattern here: baseball, ice cream, coffee mug, baseball, ice cream, coffee mug. So you can also talk about counting a little bit here, right? Because you've got 3 different items. All these items are different colors. They're all, if put together, different types of shapes. And what those shapes are, so you've got like circle, cone, more of like a cylinder and a circle, and a little round edge here. So you can talk about like edges, continuity a little bit. In terms of actually like where the different parts of the shape end. Yeah, so you've got baseball, cone, cup, coffee mug, baseball, cone, coffee mug, baseball, cone, coffee mug, and ask the kinder, you can say like, what comes next? What do you think would come next and why? So let's go back. It's a sort of arrangement of colors of shapes. So we talked about shapes or things. And if you notice, all the things are composed of shapes, and all the things are composed of shapes and colors. So we had 2 different concepts here. First, we just talked about colors, then we talked about shapes. Now we're talking about shapes and colors together to make things. So the things in our world are composed of shapes and colors. Okay, so it's a sort of arrangement of colors, shapes, or things in a way that is predictable, as in this row of things. Can you see that? So you've got some hoops here. Got a red hoop, green hoop, red hoop, green hoop. And you've got your doggy here who's running through each hoop. And you can even trace back where this doggy has been because you have this cool line indicating the way that he got through each hoop. So he jumped through, he actually touched the ground. He jumped through, he touched the ground. So I guess this could be indicative of his paw print. So now you can talk about concepts maybe like dirty or clean to say like the bottom of his paw print is dirty. So that's why every time he touches the ground, he leaves an imprint. If that is what that is, I'm just guessing. I don't know. It could be something else. And you could talk about concepts like high and low. So here he has to jump high to get through the hoop because the ground is lower than where the hoop actually is. So he has to jump up, right? So there's like an incline here. You could talk about slope, possibly. Maybe that's a little too complex, but Yeah, and then you could also look at his face here. So now he looks like a very tired dog, right? Because he's been like jumping through 4 hoops up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like an exercise. So it's exerted like virtually all of his energy. So on this page, you've got see the colors green, red, and gold. Then green, red, gold, green, red. So we talked about colors and shapes on the last page. So understanding that all of these are the same shape, is that a pattern? Right? Like what type of pattern is that? If we were to guess the next shape, what shape would come after if we know that all the shapes that we've seen thus far are rectangles? And then we also have a pattern here of colors. We've got green, red, gold. Green, red. What do you think would come next? What color do you think the next shape would be? And what shape would come next in the sequence? Once you catch on, you can guess exactly what's ahead. And that's useful. I think this is like the most useful portion of patterns anyway, because you see the same pattern repeating down this long, windy road. And so this is indicative of maybe life in terms of like years or the road traveled, like if you're going somewhere. So maybe like traveling, walking to the library, for instance. You have all of these different blocks that you're going to see, and if where you're going is from like your house to the library, every time you travel from your house to the library, you're virtually going to see the same things, right? Because you're traveling down the same road. And so you know the pattern there in terms of like street signs, homes, your neighbors, and understanding your community. So that could be an interesting type of conversation because you see here like a pattern, right? You've got just these little squares that are lined up in a particular color and shape, color and shape, color and shape, color and shape, and we already know what that pattern is. It's just green, red, gold, green, red, gold, green, red, gold. And so no matter how long we travel down this road, we're going to have this same pattern. You can talk a little bit here also about the greenery. Like maybe we start with green because green is the color of the forestry here in the background. And cool, so here we actually start to introduce the concept of order. So you see there's even order, a type of design. So here we've got a line of virtually the same person. So there's some cool things you can explore about the two people. So you could possibly explore things like gender. You could also explore nonconformity here. You could say like, oh, is this a girl? Is this a boy? What is the girl wearing? She's wearing a dress. The boy is wearing 2 pieces of clothing. He's got on shorts here and a shirt. You can talk about colors here. Well, she's got on a green dress, with a green bow. He's got on green shorts and a red top. So they both got on green, but it's actually different shades of green here. That's interesting. You can also talk about how there's the same person here, but each time that you see this person in line, it looks like she's experiencing something a little bit different. So as she gets closer and closer to the ice cream cone, maybe she's getting like happier. So here she looks maybe a little just content, still content. Now she's curious, she's getting closer, and this girl's already there. She's got her hand out, she's like getting the ice cream. So as you move closer and closer to the front of the line, you are getting more and more excited to get the prize. Here you can talk about the facial expressions of this character and how, maybe is his sentiment similar to the girl's sentiment as she moves closer and closer in line, or does his change? Is there a pattern there in terms of like the way that their facial expressions are expressing how they feel as they both get closer in line? like her hand is out when she's in the middle, and she's a little bit curious, like right before she gets to the front. But he's just like, oh, he knows how the ice cream tastes. His like tongue is out, so maybe he's like been there before. This is not his first time like having ice cream. So you have a pattern there. You have like boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. You could talk about that pattern. You can also talk about, maybe is there a pattern here with the ice cream cone, like how many scoops of ice cream are in the ice cream cone? What are the colors that you see in the ice cream cone? Are all of the ice cream cone scoops the same shape? Right? We've got 3 circles here. Also, what kind of shape is the actual cone? What color is the cone? What color is each scoop? The pink scoop, is the pink scoop lower or higher than the green scoop? Which scoop is on top? Which scoop is on bottom? Is it possible that there's ice cream here in the cone? And then here you've also got a piece of a utensil here in his hand, a tool. What is that tool called, right? We've got an ice cream scooper. Is it an ice cream scooper that has that additional function where, you know, you click and it has the swipey thing that actually scoops out the ice cream, or just like the old school janky plastic one where it's just, it has the the curvy shape in the bottom and you're just scooping out the ice cream. So you can kind of talk about that. Or the fact that maybe this like type of ice cream scooper lies in the family of a spoon. And what is a spoon? How do you use a spoon? So that's interesting. So let's just read this over one more time. You can see there's even order, a type of design. So we can talk about what design is, right? That means someone thought about like how to place these items. And it says, that's found among the children who are waiting here in line. You could also talk about inside and outside here. Like, it's pretty obvious that they're outside, but like why? Because you have greenery out here. Like you can see I have greenery too. Like I'm outside. I wanted to do this outside also because the lighting's just better than inside. Oh, this is cool too. So here we've got first a girl and then a boy and then a girl and then a boy, and then the pattern just continues here until you reach the end. So one thing that's kind of interesting, you can ask and talk about how long does this pattern continue? It continues all the way down the page. And what sort of shape does this pattern make? And does that shape look like any other shapes that you've seen before? It kind of looks a little bit like a Z, right? Maybe an S or a 2, right? So, and it reinforces the idea that we got on the other page that these characters are a girl and then a boy. And we've still got that pattern of ice cream scoops here, one on top of the other, which one's on the top, which one's on the bottom. And again, we can look at their facial expressions here as they get closer and closer and closer to, we don't know, to the front of the line. But it looks like he's kind of actually switching now from like tongue out to tongue in to tongue out to tongue in. It kind of keeps putting it, back and forth and back and forth. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so you've got the pattern on this kitchen floor is white, then black, then white. So here, something that's interesting with kinder readers is they might understand colors very well. Like they could say like, your nails are black. Your shirt is blue. But they might not actually be able to sound out words yet. So this is a good opportunity to let your kinder actually try to read the word on the page, because they wrote the word white in the color white. So you can say, hey, based on the first letter of this word, what is this? What word is this? And you can give them hints. Oh, it might be the color that the word is written in. Then black. What word do you think this is? It's written in the color. What color is this? Then white. Another thing that's kind of interesting here, he's got on some overalls. Usually these are like working clothes, a little like onesie, maybe like carpenter clothes. So you could talk about maybe like skilled work versus like manual labor, and how this character is doing he's like pulling his sleeves up and getting dirty. That's why he's got on this like onesie here. And he's the one who's going to like tile the floor, or excuse me, paint the floor. Is he tiling the floor or painting? It looks like he's tiling the floor and not painting it, but whatever. The pattern of the kitchen floor is white, then black, then white. So you can even talk here about layers. Like you have the bare floor. It could be like carpet or wood or plaster. I don't know what that is. But he's putting an additional material that is of a certain shape. You've got little squares here that align all the way over the floor. And maybe you could ask like, okay, so in this page, how many squares do you think you'd need to go all the way across? So you get these bigger concepts of like counting and like volume. If this design is followed, then the floor will turn out right. So it looks like he's all done. So you can talk about the concept of done, like what was the task that he set out to do? How do you know that he completed the task? Over here, you have some of the floor that is incomplete. You have a whole different color. We talked about the fact that when you put the tile on top of the bare floor, it's a little bit higher, so the leveling there is different. So this is incomplete versus complete. Patterns can also be found in numbers. Take a look. So here, they're just pointing out the page numbers on the book and pointing those out for the first time. So you can actually just show your kinder the page numbers on this book and how they go up. So we have page 16. What's the number after 16? The number is 17. So the order here and the sequence. Each page, the number grows by 1 as you read through this book. You can even talk about why, well, this is a lesson here that she's teaching that each page number grows by 1, and she has a little like wand in her hand. You can talk about the fact that the wand might indicate like power or maybe an accumulation of information. So she's in this position now where she can teach because she understands. So what does it mean to understand? You have a wand, you're a teacher. No. A pattern shows repeating in a certain type of way. Yeah, this is cool. You can also talk about the fact that the differences between these two characters. This character is opening the book and is learning about patterns. So that's why he's like holding this tool, which is the book, and his focus is on the book, like he's looking at the book, whereas her focus is at the audience, like she's looking at us, and she has this wand like as if she's telling us something, like I'm trying to describe to you the story. But when I'm trying to read the story, like my attention is actually on the story. So that's difference between like maybe active learning and teaching. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. You see a pattern here. It goes from 1 to 2, then 3. It's all becoming clear. So we can talk about larger numbers versus smaller numbers. That, 1, 2, 3, how many is that? If we look before our pattern actually starts to change, we can work on counting in sequence. So if we just look at the sheer number of umbrellas, here we have 1 umbrella. If we count the red and the green umbrella, we have 2 umbrellas. If we count the red, the green, and the yellow umbrella, then we have 3 umbrellas. So it's a very basic, a simple counting exercise, but still a counting exercise. And I'm pretty sure that your kinder will have questions about that. Like, oh, like how do you count that again? Or, how do you know how many there is? And it's a good exercise. You can do this with beans are good, chips, jelly beans, waffles, really anything, all right, to get to the beginning of counting. You can also talk about here like what an umbrella actually is. Why is the umbrella on top of the number? It's because you're trying to get the the umbrella is covering the rain so that the number will stay dry. So that's the purpose of the shape. It's curved so that as the rain touches the umbrella, it will float off of the umbrella, and it's not curved up so that the rain won't track into the cup of the umbrella. It's gonna just like float off. But then you have like puddles down here because after the rain hits the umbrella and falls off, it does go somewhere, it hits the ground. And so that makes little puddles when you have new droplets of rain coming. So you can explain that, and that's why you have certain shapes kind of like going up, maybe as the drop of water like hits the puddle, and then there's like a splash effect. So that's what's happening here. You can show that in the sink. It goes from 1 to 2, then 3. It's all becoming clear. So there might be a pattern here. It looks like there's a group of numbers, and the entire group of numbers is going somewhere. That's why they all have skateboards, and they're all going in the same direction. So you have the front of the skateboard, which has like more of a pointy edge, a pointy tip, and then the back of the skateboard, which is flat. And so all of the pointy portions of the skateboard are all facing in the same direction. You can point that out. You can talk here maybe about the shadow and why there's a shadow. And if there's a pattern, does every single number have a shadow? Yes. How many shadows are there all in all? We could talk a little bit about, you've got the sun here and the shading and like why that actually takes place. Yeah. See these numbers, 2, 4, 6, then 8, 10, 12, 14. Try to guess which number's next, just based on what you've seen. So you can talk about clusters of students here. So you have this group of students who seem totally confused, right? They're kind of like looking at each other. They're like, but this student, he's really excited. He's like outside of the group. He's away from the group. He's standing up and he's holding his hand up. So he looks like he knows what's going on. Whereas these students have no idea what's going on, just based on the way that they look. He's even like jumping up, like he is full of information that he wants to share. And then just a basic counting exercise, like learning how to count by twos. That's something that you maybe might want to get your kinder to actually just write down. So you can start by counting by ones and maybe just count to 10. And you can do this by writing the actual numbers and then drawing shapes, maybe like circles underneath them. And then drawing another set of numbers and circles. So leave the same number of circles there, but do erase all of the like odd numbers. So you just have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And so you still have the same number of circles, and you can talk about how each, so when you have each number that is like a multiple of 2, then you're counting by twos, and you can count up the number of circles. So probably way easier when you just like, when they actually see the circles and you're counting by them, like 2, 4, 6, 8. Here you just have the numbers written, but if you actually have the shapes like attached to them, it becomes way easier to explain that. This is interesting too. So you have like 3 different groups of people here. We talked about this group, but now you also have this group. So this is like, it's a group of 1, but still it's an instructor. So he's like trying to give this lesson, but because the student is so excited, it looks like he actually scared the teacher. So now the teacher looks like he's like dropping his material. His glasses are completely falling off. And he's like not even stable on the ground anymore. He has like 1 foot up. He's kind of trying to like hold himself in. So that's kind of interesting. You can talk about the differences between those groups and like why the teacher would be so frightened. So it might give your kidder some tips on how to like interact in the classroom and like not be so aggressive. Scary. So the pattern has us count by twos. So it would follow then that 16 would be next in line. Shall we try once again? So there's some concepts that we could explore here. The fact that the numbers at the top of the board are smaller, the numbers at the bottom of the board are larger, all of these numbers are even, all of these numbers are multiples of 2. It would follow that 16 would be next in line. How do we know that 16 is next in line? Because 16 is 2 greater than 14. And 14 is the number before 16. And you can count that. So you can say 14, 15, 16. And it might be useful to even just do this starting at 2. So if we want to count up by 2s, we have 2, 3, 4. Because 1 more than 2 is 3. 2 more than 2 is 4. So we have 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12. So doing that over and over and having your kinder actually like participate in counting those numbers really helps to get them accustomed to how to figure it out like on their own. We're already like 35 minutes in. This one's cool. Start with 1, then 3, then 5, and follow that with 7. The number 9 is what comes next, and then you guessed it, 11. So it looks like now the students might be a little bit more comfortable counting from 2s, because as this student starts pointing at 3, everyone's excited. They're like, we know, because you learned that cool trick, right? If you're starting at 1 and you add 2 more, you're just counting on your hand each time. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, right? That trick, it really does help. Now you have the teacher here who's completely exhausted. So one thing that might be a pattern, right? You can talk about students versus teacher. What do all the students have in common? And what does the teacher not have in common with those students? First of all of the students are little and they're all on the floor, right? They don't have that teaching tool. Well, you do have the one student here who actually has that wand, which is like an indicator of power or being a teacher. But the teacher here, he has like the tie, the bow, the longer slacks, and he has these like bulging eyes. Like you can talk about slight differences, right? Between your teacher, he's got the glasses. The glasses are different than any of the students. The students don't have maybe any eye vision problems yet, so they don't need glasses. They don't have that issue yet. Then you can count by 2s and 4s, or by 5s or 10s or 20s. Interesting. So now that you've gotten past counting by 2s, you can start thinking about counting by other numbers. Very useful to do this via the shapes. So just drawing, maybe 20 circles and then starting counting all by 1s, and then erase all the numbers that are not multiples of 5, and get your kinder to count 5, right? And then point to the number 5 that's written above. Count to 10. Count the 10 circles and then look at the number 10 written above. So it's kind of like a number line with all of the numbers that are not multiples of 5 written out. I can show that too. But they're getting into the concept of money now. They've got piggy banks. And they've each got like a different color piggy bank too, to indicate like whose piggy bank is it. Like my piggy bank is a different color than your piggy bank. That's how I will know that it's my piggy bank without actually just writing my name on it. Another way, they could have just written their names on their piggy banks. But maybe also we're saying like, oh, this character is a girl. She looks like she has a pink bow here. That's why her piggy bank is like purple or pinkish purple, magenta. And talk about colors here. You can count by 2s or 4s, by 5s, 10s, or 20s, and this pattern's known as skip counting. So try it with some pennies. Great idea. Like I was saying, you could draw circles, but you could actually take real money, right, pennies, and start learning how to count money that way. That's a great idea. Patterns are found everywhere, in cards, in yards, on a dress. Yeah. There's a pattern of trees here. We've got small tree or short tree, tall tree, short tree, tall tree, short tree, tall tree. We've got a line of grass here. All the grass is virtually the same, but it's like in a more linear path. We've got cards here. We've got spades, hearts. We can talk about the color differences. Which cards are red? Which cards are black? Clubs, diamonds. Don't teach your kid poker. No. And knowing them will help you start a pattern of success. Yeah, knowing patterns is interesting because if you understand how things are related to each other, then you can generally contextualize how something works. So you can talk here about trophies, like, oh, so everyone who participated and scored high enough, so above a certain threshold, gets a trophy, right? So this is an indication of winning, but not everyone's winning is equivalent. So you have the person who won first place, so that means they were the best. They get the largest trophy. Usually this would be like gold, so gold is worth more in monetary value than silver or what is that, chrome, I think, I can't remember. Yeah, but right, so you have the largest trophy goes to first place, the second largest is second place, and the shortest is third place. So what is a pattern? Do you know? And there's all of these different patterns on this page. So you can talk about different types of animals, the different blimps here, the colors of the blimps, and how far they are forward or how far they are backward. We could talk here about the different colors of the cars, even though all the cars are the same shape. So that's interesting. You have balloons down here. So you have 3 balloons. You have little clusters of 3. So you have like 3 purple balloons, 3 yellow balloons, 3 purple balloons, 3 yellow balloons. So this one's kind of cool because there's all these other books that are very similar to this. So that was about 42 minutes, right? And I mean, this book isn't that many pages. I think it was like, 18 pages. But, so no, it's 31 pages. 31 pages. But that was about 42 minutes. So, and that was, I actually understand patterns, but for someone who does not understand patterns, right, at the kindergarten level, all of these are like new concepts. So they're going to have a ton of questions, and you can like let them actually go through that exercise and try to answer those questions and draw out that pattern to see for themselves, like, does this make any sense? Like, why is this a pattern? What do you think would come next? Like, how is this related to the other things that you have going on in the story? So, I'm actually going to check out some more of the games and activities here. But the big idea is like, I just walked you through like how to explain that game, but what if like those pages were interactive, and instead of having a person next to you, you could actually interact with a part of the page, like to say here, you have all of these patterns on the page, but like why does gold come before green here, or what would come before red based on the pattern that we see? And you're like, I really don't know. And so you can like section out a part of the pattern and maybe like highlight it and click into it and understand like, oh, well, green comes before orange, or sorry, green comes after orange but before red. And see that over and over again. So if you have green, what would come before green? What would come after green? So basically asking questions about that. And if there's some part of that is misunderstood, then the environment could change a little bit to just to break down that particular concept. And I think it might make a little bit of sense to model that out in paper, just to make it a little bit more clear, like how that learning process would work. But this is really interesting for me because in developing the computer science curriculum, I've actually settled on using the Project Euler, yeah, that series of questions. I think there's like 200 now, and HackerRank has them available. But to go through each one and basically have worksheets where students can work through ideologically how to solve the problem. So that's not necessarily in code, but like pseudo coding it, and why they would solve it this way, and why the time complexity of it, and then actually translating it into code becomes, virtually pretty simple, no matter what language you're using, but definitely going to play around with that in Python. So cool. So that's been A B A B A B A, a book of pattern play.